a celebrity, Awesemo charity seasonal fantasy football league. We're very excited to have with us Chris Harris. If you don't know who Chris Harris is, you're doing it wrong. And we've got Alex Baker with us as well. Awesemo himself, the number one ranked DFS player in the world, who's dipping his feet into that seasonal game, even dropping those season-long projections over at awesemo.com. And I am Dave Loughran, and I've also got the volume on my YouTube stream. But we're happy to be with you. We've got a lot to talk about. Before we get into it, just a quick recap of how things went and how it's set up. No kicker. We got quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, tight end, a flex, none of the super flex craziness, and then a defense. Chris, let me go to you first.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot, man. No holding back. Of all the picks you saw in this draft, oh, yeah, I told you it was coming. What's the worst pick you saw? You don't even have to say their name.
You know, worst is such a relative thing. I'm looking at it right now. I didn't have that in the chamber. So,
I got to start it off hot.
Okay, all right. So I got to start it out. I got to blast Awesemo himself. What's with George Kittle in the second round? What's going on?
Okay.
Man, it didn't pay off for me. I think he's a good player, and I have a pretty good season projection for him. But just the positional constraints of the draft, it didn't work out in my favor. And I
mean, that's the whole point, right? No one's going to debate Kittle. I mean, Kittle, God, I love Kittle because he was my guy last summer, and I was all over him in season long last year. But 100%, the problem is just, especially when you get, it's so funny when we season long, like wise guys, spend time in mock draft. We probably spend more time in mock drafts all over the course of August than we do with like our families. And you get used to that. We drafted JJ and Evan. I mean, I've done 10 drafts apiece with both of them, and I just know, of course, what they're going to do. And so the minute the less scarce positions start going early in drafts, knowing that we're all going to wait on the less scarce positions, I'm always like, ooh, I don't know if I'd do that.
Yeah, no question. And when you look at George Kittle, this is a guy that I was drafting in dynasty formats, whether it be startup leagues or rookie drafts, because you could get him at an incredible value. And that's kind of one of the advantages too, Alex. If you're drafting, we'll get into this actual draft, but if you're drafting early in the summer, it can give you a distinct advantage, or it can really hurt you. We're close enough to the start of the season now that we have seemingly all of the information we need outside of a freak injury. So we seem to be good, but Chris, you went with Julio Jones 5th overall. Now, Some people might look at that and say, why would he draft him over a Devontae Adams or a David Johnson? I love it. I think Julio Jones is one of the most, and it sounds wild because he's a surefire first rounder anyway, but one of the most underrated players going early in drafts. What are we just ignoring the potential 1,710 upside this guy has every single season? Or are we that afraid that he can't score touchdowns, which he proved last year that he very much can?
Right. I mean, on my podcast in the second half of last year, when he was stuck on 0 touchdowns, I was begging people to trade for him because there's nothing inherent in this guy where he wouldn't score touchdowns. Of course, we know what happened the second half of the season. He went crazy. He's a threat to win the yardage title every single year. And I wouldn't, here's what I wouldn't do at 5, given the 4 running backs that went before. Actually, no, it was 3 running backs and Hopkins, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 3 running backs. Hopkins went before. And I have Hopkins at 1, by the way. I have Julio at 2. So I would have picked Hopkins. And we had, who was in the draft room trying to trade me Hopkins in the middle of the draft? I was like, dude, back off. That
was Manny Laura.
Hey, back off, dude. Think about it later. I'm kind of busy here. So I'm actually, if somebody says Adams there, I'm fine. If someone says Michael Thomas there, I'm fine. I don't see a massive difference among those 6 or 7 top receivers. So believe me, I just probably don't take a running back there. I mean, you'd love to have taken Elliott, but I just have a receiver there. If those first 3 running backs in PPR, remember this is PPR, it's not necessarily my standard strategy, but I am pleased to get Julio there. But if you told me it was Adams, if you told me it was Thomas, if you told me it was Beckham, I'd have been fine with all those guys.
By the way, HarrisFootball.com is Chris's site. You can also check his podcast out, Harris Fantasy Football Podcast, on iTunes and anywhere else that podcasts are available, I'm assuming. I mean, you can pretty much get them anywhere now. Alex, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the second, third, and fourth rounds here and look at some individual teams. Mm-hmm. But you went with Zeke Elliott, which we can't overlook. This is the elephant in the room. Even more so than guys like Melvin Gordon and Antonio Brown, because with Melvin Gordon, if he doesn't play, you're at least not expending a top 7 pick. With Zeke Elliott, if he plays, you're getting a bargain at 7 overall. But if he doesn't play, you're in some trouble losing that cornerstone of your offense. You feel confident that we'll get Ezekiel Elliott in a Cowboys uniform this season?
I mean, Laffy, here's the deal. I like to live dangerously. We're
you can kid him.
We're GPP players here, and you don't play to necessarily get the guy who is the safe pick. Yeah. I had Ezekiel Elliott as my top play if he plays all 15 games for your fantasy season. Will he play? I don't know, but I'm willing to take that gamble if it means I have a better chance to win this $1,500 for my charity.
I love it. Yeah, $1,500 to first place in the Awesemo Charity League. As a matter of fact, everyone, regardless of being a winner or loser, will be able to donate to their charity of choice. And there are some great charities. Would definitely recommend you check it out, Awesemo_com on Twitter. See which charities these guys are giving to. And while you're at it, follow Chris at Harris Football. Chris, let's keep this moving for a moment and talk about another risky pick. I don't see a ton of inherent risk here, but Antonio Brown in the second round, another guy, we can't just overlook this. The damn helmet, man. It is outrageous. It's out of control. I mean, this guy, first of all, he comes in the training camp in a hot air balloon. We should have known then that something was up. And now he lost another appeal. I'll ask you the exact same question. Are you confident that Antonio Brown will be on the field by week 1?
Oh, yeah, very confident of that. Can I just take it half a step back, though, and say what a jackass I am for that pick? So here's how it goes in my head. So I actually have Todd Gurley rated at that spot, like before that spot. I have Todd Gurley high because I'm absolutely with Alex. You play these things to take risk. You don't play to minimize risk. So I didn't mind the Zeke pick, and I would have taken Gurley there if I'd had half a clue. So I am picking 5th in the first round. So I'm picking 7th in the second round. And next 2 guys on my board, because it was a pretty clean first couple of rounds, except for Kittle. It was a pretty clean couple of rounds. And I get to my shot, and my top 2 guys are Gurley and then Brown, in that order, right? And I look at the Yahoo default ranks, and I'm like, all right, well, JJ's behind me, but who are these other yokel DFS idiots? Come on, I'm going to be able to get away with this. I didn't think that really, but I thought to myself, all right, which is more likely to go? I want both. Am I more likely to get Gurley now and Brown later, or should I swap them? And I looked at the default ranks in Yahoo, and for whatever reason, I decided to ignore my own ranks like an idiot. Who's the idiot? And I take Brown, the next pick. Good pick. Exactly what I would have done. Lasted exactly 1 pick, Gurley. So my entire draft would look different. My entire draft would be, I would have gone Julio, I would have gone Gurley. I would have felt like I had maybe the 2 best players at their respective positions if everything goes right. And instead I take Brown. And I still think Brown's a good value where I got him, so now I'm getting to your question. I think a lot of this stuff is just media-created nonsense. Like, what's going to come out of Antonio Brown doing all this stuff is he gets a really lucrative helmet endorsement, and a lot of people screaming about him on First Take or whatever. So I am all aboard on Antonio Brown. I don't have any worry at all.
All right. And by the way, speaking to your point on taking risks, Alex as well, I 100% with you, but I definitely think the distinction needs to be drawn between taking smart risks and dumb risks. With Antonio Brown and Ezekiel Elliott, it's a smart risk because if they play and the season goes off without a hitch, you're talking about 2 players that are at the top of their position in any season and are going to arguably give you some of the best production on the year. But when I saw in drafts maybe a few weeks ago, Darrell Henderson going like 7th round because people are hoping that Todd Gurley doesn't play or is limited. To me, that's dumb risk.
Yeah, fully agree. I agree that basically, like, okay, if you're going to take a chance, at least make there be some upside. Make there be a great result. Exactly. If you nail it, if you nail the risk on Darrell Henderson, what's your best case? I like him. he's a good player, but do we really think he's going to have that job entirely to himself the moment everybody walks out on the field? No, they're going to nurture him. Malcolm Brown plays. They're going to try John Kelly. They're going to try different play. Like the end result, it's the best possible end result, isn't that great with Darrell Henderson. It certainly is with Zeke Elliott.
No question. Let's get to some of our contestants, some of the people that were kind enough to join this league and enjoy the draft with us. We, of course, had Chris Harris and Alex Baker. We've got Roberto Luongo, 19-year NHL goalie. One of the good ones, man. Lisa Ann, she'll be on, by the way, 10 o'clock tonight, Sirius XM Fantasy. Lisa Ann does fantasy. Evan Silva, everyone knows who Evan Silva is, so he needs no introduction. Pat Mayo, the Pat Mayo Experience. Who else am I missing? Manny Laura. I got him this time, Alex. And, of course, JJ Zacharyson, late-round quarterback, one of the sharpest NFL minds out there, and I feel pretty confident saying that. What do you guys think, Alex, of Nick Chubb in standard leagues? I'm seeing him in the NFFC. He was up into the first round, 9th, 10th overall. In this round, he went 7th in the second round to Roberto Luongo. I'm a big fan of Nick Chubb this year, and I think Duke Johnson's departure helps. We can get into the Kareem Hunt situation, but Alex, you first, and then Chris, follow that up with your thoughts on Nick Chubb here, middle of the second round.
I think Nick Chubb is an exciting player this year. I mean, with Duke Johnson off the team, maybe Chubb will get some more of the receiving responsibilities. I have him ranked as my 23rd best pick in season long this year, and it looks like he was the 19th pick, so right around where I have him is where. Actually, hold on. I didn't have this on PVR, so that'll definitely affect it. Let me read. So he's actually 25th when I factor in the extra half point. And he's drafted 19th, so not too much of a reach, but this is a guy who he's not a proven talent receiving the ball, and that's what you really want in a PPR running back. So I think there's potential that it works out, but it's not a guarantee by any means.
Are you buying into Chubb and this Cleveland offense as a whole? I know week 3 of the preseason got people a little bit shook, Chris Harris.
Oh, I don't care about the preseason at all.
I hope you don't.
Please, let's everybody counter narrative and draft against what happens in the preseason, because it doesn't mean anything at all. So I actually am with Alex on my rating for Chubb in a PPR. I have him 23, but it's fine. That's fine. If you're gonna take him 19, you want him to, it's fine. I don't mind that at all. What's funny is just that the Yahoo default rank in that room had him as like the 5th or 6th pick or something.
Yeah.
So he was sitting. You guys remember he was sitting at the top of that list for a while, and I was
Crazy.
like, people are really gonna take. And everybody showed kind of admirable restraint to get him down to the point where I feel like that's the right place to take him. Late second is the right place to take him in a PPR.
Yeah, I think so too. Where do you feel? So Manny Laura, the one that was trying to trade you, DeAndre Hopkins, in the chat room. He's a guy. He and I do the Sirius XM show together, Awesemo Radio, Saturday and Sunday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. Write that down. And he sticks to his guns. He says, "Look, I don't draft RBs early." I say, "What if you're pick 3 and Christian McCaffrey's on the board?" He's like, "I probably wouldn't do it." Well, Chris, he was pick 3 today, and he went with DeAndre Hopkins, number 3 overall.
Why did he pick Julio? He subsequently asked me to trade Hopkins.
I know, and he drafted him 3 overall. And then he went Zach Ertz. We'll get into some teams here. At number 2, and then Manny in the 3rd round with Hopkins and Ertz already on his team. Came back around and went with Adam Thielen. He didn't draft a running back until, I believe, the 7th round.
Yeah, I mean, you can get away with it. You can, if you get the right guys. I mean, that's true of any strategy. If you're going to go heavy at something and ignore a pretty scarce position, you got to hit a lot of home runs or accumulate such trade chips. I mean, that's why I wouldn't be trading Hopkins right now if I were him, because I'd want to accumulate a chip. And if I get desperate for a running back, that's the one I'm going to want to trade for a stud running back. But is it workable? I mean, I took 3 receivers to start the draft, and it in no way was that me saying that's what I plan on doing. In fact, if I wasn't such an idiot, I would have taken Gurley in the 2nd, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But right. I'm perfectly comfortable then. Subsequently, I think I wound up with Michelle and Marlon Mack in 4 and 5, which of course both have warts. We all know what the potential problems can be. Mack probably 2 days ago doesn't last that long, rightly so. But I feel like, okay, I did well enough at 4 and 5 with Michelle, and then I backed it up with a whole bunch of running backs. Just let's throw a bunch of darts at Tariq Cohen and a million other guys, because I feel like, man, if I have, who did I wind up with? Julio, Antonio Brown, Stephon Diggs, 1, 2, 3. It's like, if that doesn't work for me, if those 3 receivers don't work for me, I'm done anyway. So I feel like, you can make that kind of strategy work. That's my point.
Yeah, and I actually, Alex and I discussed this during the live draft show. It is a strategy that I saw you deploy. I did the same thing, but in opposite order. I had the first overall pick. I went with Barkley, and when it came back around, Keenan Allen was really the only wide receiver in that spot that I really felt comfortable taking there. And then I went with Curry Johnson, and then David Montgomery next. Normally, I don't like to front load running backs like that, but it was just a spot I didn't feel comfortable with any of the wide receivers at that ADP. So as you did with running backs, I tried to backload my team with high ceiling, high risk but high upside wide receivers in Anthony Miller. We'll see what we get out of Valdez-Scantling, Will Fuller, and a couple of others. Just hoping that, okay, my strength is at running back. I'll take the wide receiver position, throw some darts, and if I hit on even 1 or 2 of these guys, it could put me in a pretty decent position to excel, Alex.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, your strategy, because usually when you are on the waiver wire, you can't get any receiver that's worth their salt.
We have to start 3 of them in this league, which is, a hindrance in my case.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's different when you have a guy like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who showed when there are injuries, he can take a larger share of the pie. And that kind of added value at receiver is something you can't get on the waiver wire. So it makes sense to pick those guys up during the draft, even if you can't start them all.
All right, Chris, it's time to stir the pot, baby. Do it. So I'm a big believer in waiting on quarterbacks. I think this year specifically might have the most depth at the position that I've seen in a while. I mean, in a 14-team league, I could probably wait as the 14th quarterback selected and still feel okay about my starter, maybe Jameis Winston or Lamar Jackson, you name it. Our boy Alex Baker, Patrick Mahomes, in the 3rd round, clear, look, 50 touchdown guy, especially with Luck retiring. He is the number 1 quarterback in football. What do you think about early drafts of quarterbacks this year, specifically Patrick Mahomes, where he's being drafted as he was in this Awesemo league?
Except for in this league, he lasted longer than he does in most leagues.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question.
I didn't mind that pick at all. He's the one you reach for.
Yep.
I'm not just saying that because, oops, sorry, I just jangled my camera. I'm not saying this is just Alex, because, it's Alex.
No, you already ripped his Kittle pick.
Crash the Kittle pick. No, that pick is fine. I think 50 touchdowns probably not going to happen again. Just historically speaking, it's just unlikely. Some guys gets tackled on the one. Sometimes it just happens that way. But he's still my QB1, and he'd be I mentioned earlier that Wise Guy Drafts, when you're in there with 12 of us and we're all going to wait on quarterbacks, so I'll get Mahomes in those drafts in like the 6th round.
Yeah.
Because we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And this wasn't the 2nd. This wasn't like sometimes he goes back into the 1st. This was completely reasonable. It's a reach, but I think it's probably the only reasonable one. There's no other quarterback, Watson, Rodgers, there are people like Mayfield more than I do, but that's the only one. And to be fair, I think in the room, not that many people reached within striking distance of when Mahomes went, right? I don't think so.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, Alex, I think it's a pretty salient point Chris makes. If everyone in a room in a draft is waiting on quarterback, it means that the guy that doesn't is going to get really good value, and he's still technically waiting. He just might be taking the plunge first. We all know you're a numbers guy. Patrick Mahomes must be popping enough in your projections to make that 3rd round pick well worth it, right?
Yeah, that's all it was. I knew that it's not advantage to take a quarterback that early. And I have Mahomes scoring 40 points more over the course of the fantasy season than the 2nd place quarterback. And of course, maybe there was a pick that would net me more than that, but I think There's not scarcity at quarterback, but I feel like Mahomes is such a step ahead of all the other quarterbacks that it justified the pick.
Okay, so let's take a look at the fourth round. We can't get to every pick from every team tonight. If we did, we'd be here till the sun comes up. Sonny Michel, a really interesting pick. I'm a big Sonny Michel guy. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have some concerns. And they drafted another running back, but and of course the passing game lack of involvement there is a little bit concerning. But it's such a high octane offense, Chris, that my assumption is you just feel confident that he's going to fall into the end zone 10 times this year if he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're always doing when you're kind of regressing what these guys possibly, the full range of possible outcomes. You're kind of just trying to figure out what the expected value is. And I don't know specifically what's going to happen, but I think you're right that the situation is pretty good. It's pretty good offense in general. That he himself is, looks like the power back in a pretty good offense. So in fantasy, we sort of like that. And there is this feeling, there is this X% chance that the Sony Michel we saw last year was entirely inhibited by whatever happened with his knee in August, right? And so if and when we see the Michel that we thought we were getting when they took him in the first round, the guy we thought we saw at Georgia, the very explosive player, laterally explosive, a lot of north-south explosion, a pretty good pass catcher, none of which we saw last year. Like, I can't promise that's what you're going to get, but it feels like it's, at least I can, if we wake up on December 15th and he's RB7, I can probably craft the case that says, his rookie year, he's pretty hurt. He was just hurt. We never got to see the real guy.
Yeah.
And not that I know that that's true, but I think it's again in the range of possible outcomes. So let's be honest, I'm going to be frank. I mean, he's low level RB2 for me. I passed on running backs for a long time. So he's my RB1, but I don't have him ranked that high. It wasn't like I felt like I was getting some massive steal. Maybe a little bit of a value, but mostly I needed running backs once I'd taken the three running backs. And I have to say, another like not sticking to my ranks. If any of my followers are watching the live stream, I tweeted it out. I have Melvin Gordon ahead of Sony Michel in my ranks, and I couldn't make myself do it given what I'd done in the first 3 rounds.
Exactly.
In most cases where when I would be considering Melvin Gordon, I would already have a running back. I would have an RB1, and I would feel like, great, I'm rock solid in running back. Let's get to RB2, and we'll take the big upside chance, knowing that the 4th round pick, the 5th round pick can work out. And I didn't have a running back yet. And I thought, all right, well, maybe I can get Gordon on the way back again. And I bypassed him. And sure enough, I got sniped, which that one felt a little more reasonable that I would get sniped. And so, yeah, I didn't stick to my board there.
So what you're saying is that Todd Gurley pick came back to haunt you just 2 rounds later.
I think it haunted the entire draft. I actually like the team. I like the team that came, given that I went 3 receivers, had no intention of doing that. But given that I went 3 receivers, winding up with Michel and Mack feels better than, for example, winding up with Gordon and Mack. It just feels better in that I'm already placing so much stress on running back. Maybe I don't need that extra little bit of stress. Had I taken Gurley, though, I'm almost sure I would have taken Gordon. So you're right about that.
Alex, does anyone stand out to you as a reach in the 4th round? Again, not to put you on the spot, but there are a few names here that not make me scratch my head, but that I have some legitimate concerns about, clearly personal. Chris Carson being one. I think Chris Carson could be a workhorse this year, but I do worry that Penny could be breathing down his neck. Could be entirely wrong. Deshaun Watson in the 4th round, just shortly after your Patrick Mahomes pick. Mark Ingram, do we feel confident? Lisa Ann certainly did. She took him 4th overall in the 4th round. And then Tyler Boyd. Roberto Luongo took Tyler Boyd. Look, he was pretty solid last year, but A.J. Green was out for more than just a few games. His status is still yet to be seen. And then lastly, this one we can start with, T.Y. Hilton, man. T.Y. Hilton was one of my favorite, early 3rd round wide receivers to take this year. I really liked him with Andrew Luck. Without Andrew Luck, how are you going to get deep balls to this guy? I don't even know if Frank Reich can fix this situation.
Yeah, I think this 4th round turned out really interesting because, as you mentioned, there are so many question marks around each of these situations for the running back. And that's why I was kicking myself so much when I got to this round, because all the good running backs are off the board. And I feel like these guys, like Carson, who doesn't get a lot of passes, Ingram, who's on an offense with the Ravens, that the quarterback's probably going to be the leading rusher. And then Sony Michel, he didn't really have a great rookie season last year. And I can understand the talent is there, but it's like some speculation, getting to that point where he's going to put up monster fantasy totals. And that's, I just don't think there were like any really good running backs here that really differentiated themselves from maybe the later rounds. Like guys like Philip Lindsay, maybe like that would be a guy. Maybe I'd wait around Austin Eckler. I think that like the receivers in this round may have been a little bit stronger than the running backs as far as fantasy production.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
And getting your point with T.Y. Hilton, I think that it makes sense that he's dropping now with Andrew Luck retiring, but he's still a good player.
And Chris, I can't absolve myself of all blame here either. Granted, with my O.J. Howard and David Montgomery picks, they're interchangeable. I'm picking back to back. But O.J. Howard there is certainly a risk. I mean, freakish athlete. I do believe he has a ton of upside in this offense, but that offensive line in front of Jameis Winston is terrifying, not in a good way. And O.J. Howard, despite proving with all of the metrics and, the yards per reception, he still hasn't proven on the field that he can be that guy. So I went with him. I think I reached a little bit, but this is a risk I'm willing to take. Where are you at on guys like Howard?
I like Howard a lot. I'm just not taking tight ends where they're typically going.
Sure.
Because just again, positional scarcity. There's not a need to take a tight end from me until as it turned out really late. I actually got a tight end sniped from me a little bit where I thought I might get Njoku, and then he got swiped from me right before. But if you're going to take a tight end there, I'm okay with Howard. It is, again, that upside principle, but upside with a purpose, like you were talking about before, where if you're going to take a shot on an unproven player, at least we understand that if he hits, he's got number 2 tight end possibilities. Yeah,
and you went with Trey Burton in the 12th round.
It felt like the millionth round. Can I say that it was? It felt like it was about the millionth round.
Like it was, never ending.
Yeah.
But Trey Burton, do you have confidence that? Well, I guess it's in the 12th round.
The answer is no. Any question about Trey Burton that begins with "Do you have confidence?" The answer is no. I have no confidence. He didn't really do anything last year. Plus, he's coming back from an injury that we all know he might not even play week 1. I am entirely punting that position until I can resolve it. Right? I'm just saying, what the heck? Trey Burton, fine, placeholder. There's a million other guys who could pop, and then I'll deal with it then. It was a 12th round, like I would rather have gotten Njoku in the whenever he went. He went like 2 picks before I could.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, let me ask you a question here. How much do you plan to trade before the start of the season? Because do you believe in really drafting the best player available, even if it's not meeting your positional needs, and then trading them? Or do you think that's not really a viable strategy?
I mean, the strategy that I'm going to go with here, as the sun goes down and I get plunged into darkness, I apologize for that. That was weird.
Dark here for hours, man. Just grateful.
I'm still where it's light. You can see the Los Angeles skyline. This actually is the skyline. So you can see it. But I'm apparently in a dark room now. So what I'm doing in most of these drafts is thinking about the scarcity of the position and trying to load up at those scarce positions. So in this case, running back, wide receiver. I'm firing bullets at running back, wide receiver. And there are moments where a quarterback might be on my board, might become decent value, and I'll grab him. Or there's a moment where Njoku was a decent value, and I would have grabbed him if it lasted like two picks later. But my overall feeling is am I doing it to trade? Not necessarily. I think I'm more doing it to establish depth for when the carnage starts, because everything we think we know the second that the games kick off suddenly turns out to be completely wrong, and now we have to kind of adjust. So I just want as many options in the chamber as I can have. In the case of someone I could have taken another tight end. I don't remember who I took Jamal Williams maybe in the 15th round, because it felt like to me in this kind of draft, Jamal Williams should probably get drafted, even though I don't love him. But it feels like the kind of guy where there's potentially a massive workload waiting for him if Aaron Jones were to get hurt. So rather than take the second tight end that's garbage, I'll just take Jamal Williams and then I'll see what it looks like leading into next Thursday. If it looks like Burton might not play, Burton might be the one I drop, right? Because in the end, I've kind of reconciled myself. I'm streaming tight ends for a while.
Sure. At the risk of sounding hyperbolic here, this next player, you talked about getting guys at a certain value. Where is drafting? And I say this because right now, for people that haven't drafted, this feels like one of the biggest questions that needs to be answered as we're looking at these drafts. Where is Duke Johnson, who went 11th in the 5th round to Chris Spags? Where is he good value? And are we just immediately going to assume that Duke Johnson becomes the bell cow back in Houston despite never handling that role in his, 5-year career?
If you're asking me, I say we're not assuming that. I think what we're probably all assuming is that there's a transaction coming down the wire where someone,
right, a Jay Ajayi or something.
Right. If it's Hyde, if it's McCoy, if it's
right.
Jay Ajayi, if it's Jeremy Hill, who knows? I don't know who it might be, but probably somebody is joining that group, and probably that makes Duke Johnson look like less of a bell cow. He's never had 200 touches in his career. I think he's never averaged more than like 6.5 carries in a game. I think he has 4 career games in 64 career games of double-digit carries. I'm not saying it's impossible, because it could just be that Cleveland wasn't putting him in a role that he should have been put in. But, he's listed at 210 pounds. Color me somewhat skeptical. I don't think he's 210 pounds. I think he's Dion Lewis sized, maybe a little more oomph to him than Dion Lewis, which, that at Dion Lewis's size, Dion Lewis had a year where he ran between the tackles for the Patriots and was really good and then got hurt. My guess is that when we get to the end of the season, Duke Johnson was, especially in a PPR, a really nice 5th round pick, a fine flex kind of guy where even if somebody else joins, there's still plenty of work in today's NFL. It's some sort of timeshare, and he probably has the more valuable side of the timeshare unless Carlos Hyde comes in and just lucks into falling into 11 touchdowns.
Alex, kind of on the same note here, different player. JJ Zacharyson went with Damian Williams in the 3rd round, just backing up a round or two here because it kind of speaks to the same as Duke Johnson, except in a heavier volume capacity. Although Damian Williams has never been, he's been in, I think people forget that he's been in the league since 2014. And when you look at the amount of touches he's seen, he saw once Kareem Hunt, everything went down with him in Kansas City. Damian Williams saw 5, 8, 10, 13, and 11 carries. Prior to that, he had seen double-digit carries twice in his career, 10 and 11. Are you feeling confident that he is a 3rd-round guy this season or higher?
Yeah, I think there are definitely some question marks, but Carlos Hyde has shown he's not really a great running back in the NFL.
That's the truth.
And then they have Darwin Thompson behind the two of them, who maybe could have a role, but I think it's safe to say that Williams will have a pretty decent role this year. I don't know if it's 3rd round material, but as we're talking about, running back is so scarce that I think it could work out.
Chris, is the explosiveness of this offense alone enough for you to draft Williams in the 3rd like he went today?
And it was really early 3rd, right? Wasn't it like the 2nd?
Damian Williams went 2nd overall in the 3rd round. I went Curry Johnson, right. Number 1 in the 3rd, followed by Damian Williams to JJ.
It's just where I have him in a PPR. It's almost exactly where I have him, and I think that rank, clearly it's a high risk pick. It's another one I think that falls under JJ's making the kind of risky pick that we admire.
Right.
It's the kind of risky pick that if it works out, he's not just half-assing his way into some points. He's got a team
that could average 28 points per game.
He's got a potential league winner on his hands, but he's also got a potential 3-way platoon with Darrell Williams, for God's sake. Like, anything could happen with that backfield. So I think as long as you go into that pick early in the 3rd round, I'd love to get him like late 3rd round. That would feel even better. And if Carlos Hyde gets cut, his ADP is only going up, by the way. If that happens on Saturday and people doing drafts on Sunday, you're going to pay a lot more for Damian Williams probably. My feeling is As long as you go in here with your eyes open about the kind of risk you're assuming and maybe try to mitigate that risk elsewhere in your roster, I think it's probably fine. And I don't think Damian Williams is a bum. I think he's okay. I think he does a few things pretty well. I mean, we probably could have said a lot of the same things about Kareem Hunt when he took over that role.
Right.
So that's out there for him.
Right. I mean, if you put Damian Williams in Miami, he might go undrafted. It's just one of those, you're in a good situation. Chris, speaking of assuming risk, though, last year rookie running backs, save for Saquon Barkley, and we could talk Phillip Lindsay, who went undrafted in many instances, were disappointing. Royce Freeman, Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones. I'm sure I'm missing one, but we understand the point. Sonny Michel wasn't bad when healthy. And Darius Geis, of course, went down with the ACL. But Josh Jacobs goes 12th in the third round. So what is that, 36th overall? David Montgomery, I may have reached a bit on him, but that's pretty close to where his ADP is right now. I took him first in the 5th round. Actually, based on where his ADP and PPR is, I got value based on that. I'd say he was a little overdrafted. And then Miles Sanders, who I've seen go as high as the 5th round, was drafted 2nd overall in the 7th round. I'll follow it up last with Devin Singletary, who went 11th round, 2nd overall. Which of these running backs, or if more than one, do you really like at their current ADP, and which do you hate?
So in our draft, the one that stood out to me as the best value was Miles Sanders. He was in my sights when he went. I probably could have taken him around earlier and felt pretty good about getting him. It just wasn't the right moment or whatever. But my general feeling is, Jacobs is probably a pretty fair price because I like the player. I think the player's pretty good, and I don't know about the role. I don't really know about the offense, but I think the player's pretty good. And you're not investing you're investing less heavy this year in him than people were investing in Royce Freeman last year. Like,
right.
You can't really compare them as prospects. You just can't. Josh Jacobs is a potential very, very first team, very good player, and Royce Freeman never was, even at the time. Rashad Penny, I felt the same way. So I like Josh Jacobs more. That he like if you were going to combine the last 2 rookie running back classes, Barkley's on his own plane, but I'd say Jacobs would be the second best rating for me. So I don't mind him at his ADP, and I'm with you where you took Montgomery. I'm comfortable with that. That's good. You're assuming risk. There's Mike Davis risk. There's Tariq Cohen risk. There's the kid fumbles one time or misses a pass blocking assignment. He's suddenly benched for 3 weeks. Like, we just don't know what might happen. Momentarily, I'm going to open this window shade because it's freaking in the dark over here. This is like metaphorical. You guys have this bright, brilliant, shining light on you guys, and it just indicates your wisdom. And meanwhile, as the light just like death crashes down on me.
That must be it.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
And then I'm not Devin Singletary. He went late enough where I'm not going to quarrel with someone taking him late, but it's fine. We talked about Evan Silva taking Alexander Madison late. That's cool. I think he should be drafted. The Dalvin Cook owner really should be taking Alexander Madison. He seems to me he's the number 1 handcuff in fantasy by the traditional description of what a handcuff is, because we don't really have those situations anymore. And Dalvin Cook is more valuable and is injury prone. And here's this guy that you can get in the 12th round. Everybody who takes Cook should take him. And who else am I missing who you mentioned? Any other rookie running backs?
I think that's it. I might be missing one, and I can't think of him, but I think those are the big ones right there, because you hit on Miles Sanders.
Right.
Very solid analysis on the rookie backs. It's a big part of this year's draft. How about this one? Here's a bit of a bomb. Alex, Dede Westbrook to Pat Mayo of the Pat Mayo Experience, first in the 6th round. What do you make of that? Nick Foles throwing him the rock out in Jacksonville. Dede Westbrook, 1st round pick. He went ahead of guys like Hunter Henry, Christian Kirk. He went ahead. Josh Gordon went in the 6th round as well, by the way. He went ahead of Robbie Anderson, Alshon Jeffrey, and a slew of players that I don't have time to name.
I think Westbrook maybe. He's a guy who there's upside based on the talent level. He didn't show last year that he was very efficient with his targets. I think he averaged just over 6 yards per target. So I think there's reason to be pretty concerned about Westbrook being good this year. In addition, Marquise Lee is coming back from injury, so I think Lee is going to take a lot of targets. And I I think there are some better wide receivers that are taken after him. Pretty much everyone in the 6th round, in my opinion.
Can I renominate my worst pick of the draft? Can I light up Pat Mayo, who is an original cast member on my podcast, but we haven't been able to schedule his work late.
Well, that means that you're good to do it. If that's your buddy right there and he was on your podcast, free reign to go off on Pat Mayo and the D.D. Westbrook. What is it about D.D. Westbrook to take him above some of these guys, Chris?
I really like D.D. Westbrook as a player, but not at that price.
I like him in the 9th round, sure.
Right,
8th round, yeah.
This is the point. Like, as we have this conversation about these players, there's no player I won't draft.
Exactly.
There's no player you're not going to draft. It's just a matter of when you take them. And this was way too early for D.D. Westbrook. As much as I've been a huge fan, a huge proponent, this strikes me as too clever by half. This is, maybe I'll get 100 catches. You're not going to get 100 catches. And the problem is that if you're not going to get 100 catches, then what is the upside? Because for better or for worse, the Jags have decided he's a slot receiver. For better or for worse, the Jags have decided 85% slot routes and not down the field, a very low average yards to the target. Like, I just don't know how we set. Marquise Lee might not be back. Marquise Lee, it sounds like he won't be back for week 1. At some point, he might be back. It's scary when you tear your ACL and a year later you're still not healthy. But the point would be that Alex is right. There are other receivers there, whether it's Marquise Lee or Keelan Cole or anybody, like a lot of different guys. Somebody else is going to be going down the field, and D.D. Westbrook's not. And it feels like, granted, I mean, I think in this draft I took Jarvis Landry as a bench player, but I think Landry went after Westbrook, I'm pretty sure.
Well after Westbrook.
Yeah. So, like, if Jarvis Landry is your cap, and that's with what I consider to be a much better quarterback, I feel like you reached. Sorry, Pat.
I stress this point all the time. When I say I don't like a player, it means I don't like them where they're being drafted, where their ADP is. It doesn't mean I won't roster them or won't draft them. And when a player falls as far as some of these guys do, I'm perfectly willing to take the bait, like Melvin Gordon in the 5th round. It's sketchy, but I'll roll the dice. Are you happy, Alex, with Sammy Watkins in the 7th? And is this another situation where you say, hey, high-powered offense, they're going to put points on the board, and I just want another piece of it?
Yeah, at this point, I was just struggling to find good players. I was thinking about Austin Eckler, but I had the same problem as you, Chris, where I looked at the ADP and it was so far down on the board that I was like, no one's going to pick him. I'll get him next round. So I went with Watkins. I mean, a really talented player has had a lot of injuries. He's not the top dog in Kansas City, but if there's an injury or two, I mean, he could have a monster year. And I'm banking on that upside if I'm going to win this league for sure.
Chris, are you buying into the 19th iteration of Josh Gordon hype? Because he went in the 6th round, 7th in the 6th round to Roberto Luongo. We all know that when sober and when not suspended, Josh Gordon is one of the most talented players in the league, but he's still getting older. It's not like he's in a cryogenic chamber just sitting there until they let him play again. And is he going to play past October? Like, is this a spot where you feel comfortable drafting Josh Gordon in the 6th round because his ADP has skyrocketed, of course, ever since he was reinstated?
I have a face again.
There you go. It's a good-looking face.
I have a feeling you're about to say something very wise.
I have a face. Except for, unfortunately, like the skyscrapers are moving or something because now the sun is about to be too bright. But we'll deal with that in a second.
We'll work it out.
So Josh Gordon, I think it's actually okay. I don't like the big issue I have is if you're taking him as a cornerstone of your team and no one is.
Yeah.
So
it's an upside play again. Ton of upside.
Yeah, I'm okay. I think it fits that conversation where if something goes right. But I'm with you that the 2013 Josh Gordon feels like that's gone, right? I did a YouTube, so I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/HarrisFootball, where we break down film. And I broke down Josh Gordon's Patriots film from last year. And my feeling was that, man, maybe it was a hamstring, but he wasn't fat. He didn't show any speed last year. It was all post routes. It was all slants. It was all like big body. It was Alshon Jeffrey, to be honest. Like the thing I saw out of him was Alshon Jeffrey as now I'm like dying in the sun. Man,
particularly in the end zone with Gordon too. You saw a lot of that,
jump ball, box out. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I actually have him a couple spots ahead of Alshon because I like the situation a little bit better, and maybe I think he himself has a little more deep speed even than Alshon, who was really slow at this point. So I don't mind where he went in this draft, and I don't mind him as a risky 5th round pick that sort of meets the criteria that we were talking about before for risk.
Yeah, Alex, in the 8th round, Dante Moncrief went to Chris Baggs. I think it's a pick we need to discuss because is the number 2 really solidified? Oh, he's getting beat up by that sun. Look, he's making already. It's funny too, Chris. I deal with this literally every day during our 5 p.m. show. Every day. It is brutal. For me.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. But what's your takeaway on Dante Moncrief, knowing that there is, still don't know if there's a relation or a chemistry between James Washington and Roethlisberger. Like outside of Juju, you have Vance, and is Dante Moncrief capable of kind of wrestling away that number 2 role in what should be an offense that scores points even without Antonio Brown?
I think that Pittsburgh throws the ball a ton, and Moncrief has been in the league for a while, and he hasn't really shown like huge fantasy performances, at least recently. But maybe if Juju Smith-Schuster was injured or something, like then I could see Moncrief being really big in fantasy. But I just don't really see it at this point. The other receivers drafted after him, aren't amazing, but I think a guy like Geronimo Allison, maybe a stronger player than Moncrief, just by a little bit though.
Mark Andrews went in the 9th round, Chris. Again, the Roberto Luongo. Certain players just get that hype, for one reason or another. Yeah. Mark Andrews is getting that hype. It was Darren Waller earlier in the summer. Now it's Mark Andrews. Are you buying into the hype?
Is there a way for me to say no while not being like really mad about the pick? I feel like, that's how I feel. I feel like now we're in the second half of the draft. Take whatever tight end you feel good. That's fine.
Right.
It's okay. I don't feel like it's funny. I was on Funston and Evans, their podcast, as a guest, and they laid into me because I was low on Mark Andrews. And I'm like, dude, what are we really fighting about here? Tight end 14 against tight end 20.
Right.
Are we really having this argument?
In an offense that's going to run the ball 98 times a game?
Sure, and I guess I just actually do a Lamar Jackson video for the show this week, and just watched a bunch of Lamar Jackson throws at the end of the year to Mark Andrews, and I acknowledge there's some nice throws. Sure. And fine, I acknowledged all that is possible. I can make a case for all those tight ends. I can make a case for all of them. If Andrews has hype behind him that causes him to go in the 8th or the 9th round, I'm probably not going to take him just because I go, what's the difference? If I take Trey Burton, what's the difference? If I take Kyle Rudolph, what's the difference? It strikes me that they're all probably 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. And that's kind of what that position is. And if you're wrong, what's the real upside of Mark Andrews? Do we really think he's suddenly Travis Kelce? If you do, okay, but I don't.
All right. Hey, by the way, this league is public, so you can check out all of the draft results if you want to see it on your own. You want to see how Chris did, you want to see how I did, you want to see how Alex did, or any of our guests that joined us in today's draft. We'll tweet the link out at awesemo_com. You can check it out for yourself and follow along with the lead as we move on throughout the season. Alex, looking at LaShawn McCoy, he went to Spags, then Keke Coutee, Adam Humphries, John Brown. This is when it starts, starts to wind down a little bit. And then you went in the middle of the 10th round with Deshaun Jackson. I like it, man. It's risky, but what's not risky in this round? He's the type of guy that I like more for best ball because he can break off those monster weeks. But didn't he still lead the league in yards per reception last year at in his 10th season? I like it in the 10th round, man.
Plus, sorry to interrupt, but they were screaming in the draft room. Who was screaming? They were so mad that John. It was Chris. It was the other Chris in the draft.
Yeah, about John Brown, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, Deshaun Jackson, I'm not crazy about it because, I mean, like, I appreciate the kind words here. But last year in Tampa Bay, he was really efficient and he wasn't on the field like as much as other, like big name wide receivers. And I'm expecting that to continue being the case. So I don't know if he has the same upside as maybe like a guy who's on the field all game. But he is like a good player when he's on the field. So I'm just hoping that he puts up some big performances for me.
Chris, I have mixed feelings on handcuffing backs, but I think you made the right decision with Nyheim Hines in an offense that might lean on pass catching backs more than they ever intended to a week ago. What was the thought process here with Hines in the 10th?
Basically, if my listeners ever found out that I passed up on Nyheim Hines, they would probably stop listening to my show.
So you've been heavy on him all year?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was a little more of a fun deal when Andrew Luck was the quarterback. Here's the thing. I don't even know if it's really a handcuff. So you're right, I have Marlon Mack. I'm not even sure it's really a handcuff because if Mack goes down, I don't think Hines is the back. It'll be Jordan Wilkins, or they'll find someone else.
Yeah.
Probably Hines sticks in his role. It's like saying, is Tariq Cohen really David Montgomery's handcuff? Probably not. I mean, it's just these guys are small, and it's unlikely that they'd be leaned on that heavily.
That's a good point.
So the Hines thing felt like a value pick. It's like if I find this year's Tariq Cohen, from last year, who becomes somewhat flex worthy, even if he's a little bit up and down, because the touches probably just aren't going to. We're not looking at a 15 touch per game guy. Then it feels like it's decent trade bait. If the Colts are just an unexpected wagon with Jacoby Brissett, which certainly is not what I'm planning on, but if it were to happen, then both running backs can have value the way Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen did last year. My thing about Hines is just really like the player. Just feel like I've quoted this stat in a million different places, so you'll forgive me if you've heard me say it before, but this is a world-class sprinter. This is a 4.33 guy who didn't make a play over 28 yards last year. It's just not realistic, and it's not going to happen again. He's going to get free and run for a really, really long touchdown. Now, that kind of player could be, like Alex was saying, like the equivalent of Deshaun Jackson, where you don't know what week's going to happen, so you're just ticked off not knowing when to start him. That's certainly possible. Or you could get the crazy Cohen season where you get high single-digit touchdowns just because he keeps making plays. And I'm not saying he's Cohen, because I didn't see that kind of lateral quickness, but he is faster than fast. He's a very fast player.
Chris, we appreciate you joining us today. A couple more before we wrap it up. We don't need to go through all 15 rounds because it starts to get ugly and we're just taking flyers. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Were there any guys in these double-digit rounds that stood out to you, and you said it could be your own too, could have been your own pick, where you said, man, that is a good pick there. This is the type of value that has the upside to win leagues?
Well, it's just what we talked about with the waiting on quarterbacks. I mean, Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger, didn't they go like back to back? You took Brees in the 12th.
And then JJ took Big Ben.
Yeah, and then JJ took Big Ben, and it's like, and I think I had taken Russell Wilson, who I have rated ahead of those two guys because I'm a little higher on Wilson than most people are. I took him in the 11th. So if you're in the kind of draft where waiting on quarterback is possible, where not every team, JJ and I don't know, was Brees your first quarterback?
No, the only reason he wasn't is because Lamar Jackson to me is a very high ceiling but low floor quarterback, and I generally don't draft two of them. Right. But in a spot like this, I figured I'll play it safe with Drew Brees, and there wasn't anyone I loved there anyway. Right,
you backed him up with Brees, but I knew that there were a few teams, mostly like me and JJ and maybe Evan, who hadn't gone quarterback at all, and then not a lot of people had not done two quarterbacks. So it's like if you find yourself when you're drafting in that situation where people aren't racing to gobble up Jacoby Brissett, to gobble up every quarterback, then waiting and getting your starting quarterback in the double-digit rounds is always going to feel pretty good. Although I say that, and then I realize, Jacoby Brissett did get drafted in this league. Okay.
I know that was Alex. Were you as shocked as I was to see that Jacoby Brissett got drafted? I believe ahead of guys like Sam Darnold and a few other guys and a few other. I have to look it up.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I was a little surprised because you'd expect maybe only the top 15 quarterbacks or so to get drafted, and Jacoby Brissett is probably below average quarterback. I mean, he runs the ball a little bit, doesn't pass the ball that well. So I don't really see the point of picking him, to be honest. But 14th round, I don't love any of the picks.
Yeah, Trubisky went Trubisky and Brissett went, but like Garoppolo didn't. I think Cousins did actually. Josh Allen did. Like there's some, so there were a couple of anomalous, like, wow, you're reaching deep down for, but again, it's very late for non-quarterback type, double-digit round type guys. There was one I got sniped pretty good, and I'm looking at the draft right now to see if I can remember who it was right around me. Ebron. Actually, Luongo got me with Ebron. I was like, I'll take Ebron in the 12th round.
Ebron hung around for a long while. He went 137th or so overall.
Right, and so I was going to take him at 138. That's when I took Burton.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, frankly, have Burton one spot ahead of Ebron. So I just felt like, okay, if I'm only taking one tight end, maybe I will take the guy who I don't worry misses the early week 1 game. So I might have taken Ebron, but I'm not too outraged. And actually, I think Luongo got me another time too. But I'm not finding who. Oh, it was Royce Freeman. It was the 10th round.
Yeah.
When I took Hines, because I had gone so receiver heavy, it was almost that strategy that we were talking about before we started recording. Like, let's take some high upside shots on running backs who probably aren't going to do anything, but if they were to win the job and are better than we think, suddenly here they are as potential lead backs. You know, if I'm comparing Nyheim Hines and Royce Freeman, in a lot of circumstances, I prefer Hines because it feels like he's likelier to be startable as a flex. But the one who's likeliest to be a miraculous RB1 is not Nyheim Hines. It's probably Freeman. So I thought that was a pretty decent pick, even if I don't love the player. It just sort of made sense.
Sure. Consider this for a moment, fellas. Jacoby Brissett went 14 picks after Drew Brees in this draft.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That is incredible. And Alex, you drafted Jay Ajayi. I guess that's just with some anticipation or hope that he will be on a football team and have a role by week 1.
I hope so. Otherwise, I probably won't start him.
Wise decision.
They don't pay him the big bucks for nothing.
That's right. That's how you win money. Yeah, I think that'll do it. Chris, I mentioned it earlier, but where can everyone find your work at? And again, we really appreciate you joining us and joining this draft. It's been a good time.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Pleasure was all on this side of the table, as they say. I'm at harrisfootball.com. You can find me on Twitter at harrisfootball. I do 5 podcasts a day. Right now we're doing 5 YouTube shows a day, breaking down film of the various players that you're thinking about drafting. We have a good backload in August. Yeah, it was a blast. I had a really great time. I'm looking forward to playing this league out. I remember when we were originally talking about doing this, we were just going to mock it out like in July, and this is way better. I mean,
way better.
Much better sense of like this actually helped people, and then also we get to play it out and all feel pretty good about our teams.
Yeah, the money goes to a good place, and we get to talk smack on each other all season long because there's something on the line. It's a beautiful thing. Alex, what do you have to say before we close it out, brother?
Yeah, Chris, thanks so much for joining us and for participating in the celebrity draft. It was awesome talking to you. Thanks also to Lisa, Pat Mayo, Roberto Luongo, Manny, of course, and JJ Zacharyson, in addition to our awesome guys.
And Evan.
Oh, Evan Silva. How did I forget him?
Chicago boy.
Hopefully he doesn't think I'm throwing straight at him. Cause,
there's no shade in Chris's place right now. It's been a blast, guys. Again, we appreciate everyone hanging out and watching us. And again, we'll post a link on Twitter. And all of us will retweet it so you can follow along with the league. It's public. You can see all season long who's doing well, who's doing poorly. And the ones that do poorly, let them know about it. It's not fun otherwise. So talk some garbage on everyone along with us, and we'll have fun. Root for your favorite people, and we'll catch you back here at the end of the season to recap it all. This has been the Awesome-O Charity League post-draft recap. Dave Loughran, Christopher Harris, and our boy Alex Baker. See you later.